Here. Hello everyone, welcome to today's webinar. This is Mike Steckline with the Institute for Enterprise Excellence. Hope you're having a good day. Today we've got a presentation from some friends in La Crosse, Wisconsin, and they're going to be talking a little bit about some things they've been doing, applying some methods and approaches to adjust systems. So there's a little bit of background information. I have tried to put the phones on mute. For some reason, today's phone call has been a little bit of a challenging. So if there's background noise on your side, if you could mute your phone, that would be great. This webinar is being recorded. Another way to be able to interact is to ask questions using the chat function. And that's another way to forward some information to us as far as questions you'd like to ask. And so the recording to this webinar is going to be available for yourself and for others after the fact. Just a little bit of background before we get started. This is the model that we've been using to teach people about a sustainable cultural transformation. And some things to think about with this particular webinar is we encourage people to understand the problem with continuing to try to push tools and methods into the organization, which seems to perpetuate a program of the month pathway. And we try to help people to think about an alternative pathway that is challenging because it requires new thinking and learning new principles and different approaches. And it requires connecting with the purpose of your organization, the purpose of what you're trying to do. And it requires thinking about what kinds of principles are you going to use to drive the kind of systems that you want. And in the course of doing this, we teach people a methodology, and there's a simple diagram there showing a template that we explain to people. And this is a bit about what Paul and his team are going to be talking about today, which then helps you to think about what kind of systems are going to drive the kinds of behaviors and results that you want. And how would you pull in the kind of tools that you need in order to affect those systems? So that's just a little bit of a background context on today's webinar. I'm going to turn it over to Paul Olson and his team and have them go through the slides. And again, there's some time at the back end for answering questions, but if you would like to put some questions out on the chat function, please do that. So I'm going to turn it over to Paul Olson and the team that's assembled there. Thanks again for doing this today, guys.
You're welcome. So I'm Paul Olson. I work at Mayo Clinic. Been here for like 31 years. I'll let my other teammates introduce. We're going to kind of back and forth as to who will be talking, so hopefully we hear us. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Siddharth Srinivasan. I've been with Mayo for a little over a year now.
And I'm Glenn Barkenek. I'm also on the team here.
Okay. So we're with the Mayo Clinic Health System, part of Mayo Clinic. The Mayo Clinic Health System you can see on this map is made up of like about 4 different regions. We have Southwest Minnesota, Southeast, Northwest, and we are part of the Southwest part of Wisconsin region. We have like 12 or 13 clinics. We have a hospital in La Crosse and do a lot of primary care, specialty care services. And you can see some of the information as far as our physicians, communities, and our amount of allied health staff. And actually that would be in the whole system when you see in the upper left-hand corner. So our journey towards a lean culture, just to share real quick our journey, we really started with lean tools, and I think Mike demonstrated this on his presentation already. But for us, we started with tools in 2007. We did a lot of things in 5S. We tried to do some things in standard work. Did a lot of mapping, A3s, Kaizens. Found that we could get improvement, but we couldn't sustain it. 2013-14, realized we needed a lean management system. So now you're starting to hear the word system. We started to recognize that. We really started to emphasize visual management and focused lean workshops for our leaders. And so we had like 240 or 50 leaders that went through this training in about a year and a half. And we call that our mile-wide, inch-deep approach, which really didn't give us, it gave people exposure, so it was a good thing, but we weren't really getting people the ability to practice and to be able to sustain and really learn the lean management system. So in 2015, 16 is when somewhere in there we, but has a good name on it.
All right, take it away. We'll edit the recording. Apologize for that, folks.
All right. Any way I can make this? Don't know if I can change the slides though.
Oh, I got that. Try it now.
Yep. All right. So yeah. So as I was describing, similar to what Mike was saying earlier, we went to tools, we got some improvement. We didn't really even look to systems, but we couldn't sustain those improvements. We, in 2015, 16, like I said on the map before, we really then we got our Shingo learning. We started learning about the principles. We learned how if we pick and work on and improve the right systems, we can actually try to achieve those principles and achieve the ideal behaviors that help us to get the results we want. We then really could understand, and we struggle with this here in our organization, everybody did, why do you want me to have leadership standard work? Why do you want me to go to Gemba? What are all these tools that you keep showing us, but what do they mean? When we really understood systems, we then knew that we could pull the tools into the systems, we could coach people to those systems, and it just made a much clearer picture for everybody to understand their role, why the tools, and that these systems we're creating made a lot of sense. So what we want to share with you today is just some of the systems that we worked on, and just be here to share. And you'll see that they're not perfect yet, but we are continuing to work on them, and we're using them in many ways, and we'll continue to improve them. Improvement never ends. So in our organization, we have two systems. Others identify these similarly, maybe a third system, but for us, there are two major systems we have. There's a strategy deployment system, and we have a managing daily improvement system. And we teach the management daily improvement to model cell areas to help enable and teach them to become really good problem solvers. And this is the different parts of our managing daily improvement system. And we believe that if we teach the MDI system, it really helps even enable frontline people to be helping us even better in the strategic deployment system. And you can see in the center that we believe we will achieve these behaviors. We'll see learning, communicating, coaching. We will be doing A3s, Kaizen events, PDSA improvements, problem solving, and model cells, and we will get accountability to targeted incomes, and we will have engaged teams and developing really good frontline problem solvers. So some of the systems that, this is what we worked through and tried to understand. We have work systems. We'll show you one work system for sure that we've built. And then you can see the categories. Again, this is from our learnings, but we kind of align with this, that we've identified and built some systems around align, enable, improve. We learned in our session with Jake and Mike and Max that we should really identify those systems, but really identify them and try to be somewhat balanced throughout the align, enable, and improve part of our learnings. And then also you can see we want to make sure that we are balanced in those three groups, but also that we teach, spread, and try to make sure we're even spreading it on a balanced approach and making sure maturity, we don't have too much maturity on some systems under align, enable, or improve, but also make sure we have a balance in terms of the number maybe that we're working in each one. And we're really using these and evaluating and improving these through our model cell deployment approach that we're using. Just showing this real quick, we set our work systems, obviously a lot of them are, and hopefully you can see this, but the top part, the work system, was just us doing an inventory of all the different work areas that we have, and then the bottom is just kind of a repeat of the align, enable, improve systems that we identify and connect with. So in today's discussion, these are the 8 systems that we've worked on. The red ones are the ones that we will talk about in this presentation and try to share some key learnings and share the we'll share the system build document, but you may not see the ones in red. But we will spend more time on the standard work system. We feel at the current state of where we're at, this is the one that we probably use and have it's matured farther than the rest. So we really wanted to drill down into this system and share with you some key learnings and how we actually built the document. So this, just going to quickly going through with you the system build document. You identify which system you're working on. You quickly, or as you're working through this, really identify the purpose and scope of this system. The next step then was to really think about, what are the performance outcomes we want from building this system. The next section then is, and again, you learn this in Shingo training and system build as well, but what are the ideal behaviors we want to see coming from the system? And this one is, I think, been a really helpful approach for us because it helps our customers to understand why we need these ideal behaviors. Because if we do these things, we will be able to achieve really good outcomes. And if we even go to observe people using this system and different tools, we can, as we've learned through the training, we could actually record and see people doing these things. And if we see people attending huddles, if we see people, doing whatever, we know that we're going to be able to get sustaining results by seeing these things. So it really helps with going to Gemba and doing observation. It tells you in the system what you should even be able to see when you go, and if you're not, then how do we help them improve? Then the last section, or last part of it then is, here's where once we built these processes, which is next, we could then identify even where the tools fit in. Again, gives the frontline or leaders, managers, frontline people an understanding to look at this, where the tools fit and why. There's a process between leader, manager, frontline. Again, this is probably why we got so excited about Shingo, because we really struggled. We had really good frontline engagement, but our managers and leaders really didn't understand their role. This really helps them understand their role. It's been a great benefit. And then lastly, the triggers. So, what are the triggers? Is it on leadership standard work? Is it on my calendar? Is there a huddle? What are the different things that trigger some of these activities? Probably see in our system builds where we're at right now, the last two sections, we're working on this, but what is the review mechanism, or renewal mechanism, sorry, and then what are the measures that we need to identify to see whether or not this system is helping us make improvement. We are probably still working hard on improving in that section, but love what we're doing, and it helps us a ton. All right, so now what I want to do is dive down into the system build standard work one, just to kind of share with you one that we feel is worth sharing. So as we work through this, and we work through this with people from all levels, leader, manager, frontline. This is not something the Lean Office is doing alone. We actually have been and continue to work with people from those three different levels to develop, understand why we need these systems, but then start to develop them together. So what's the purpose and scope of the standard work system? So the team identified it's really to create a consistent way to do our work to provide the best outcomes for patients and customers. So that's the purpose. So some of the performance outcomes is that there's agreement regarding the best current process. What's the best way we currently do our work, and all agree to that. That if we have a really good standard work system, we feel that our patients and customers will get consistent and the best outcomes that we can give them. Really believe that we will reduce variation and waste, and that's a really big thing that we're really learning to understand, and is helping us. Is if we can reduce that variation, it makes an impact on outcomes, quality, things like that, but also how does our day start and end? If we can improve on that, it's really going to be helpful. Staff satisfaction and staff competency. So those were listed as the performance outcomes if we create and use this standard work system. The next section you can see then with behaviors then is that, what would we expect to see if we're observing leader behaviors? So here we said that we would see our leaders modeling the standard work for other leaders and for frontline people while they're in Gemba. An example of that would be they actually have leadership standard work. And you'll see later we have a Gemba system where this is really helping them see their role, and they go there and do the similar kind of a Gemba visit. That we would see them going to Gemba and asking about standard work and asking about, in this case, standard work, but asking questions actually out where the work is done. And that they actually would go out and they could see and observe the standard work system in place. Manager behaviors, you know, they'd be assuring staff qualifications, competency, and learning attitude. They would celebrate standard work compliance. Standard work would be, you could see that it's being developed and improved, that it'd be visual somewhere in the area, that we're actually sharing standard work. And that's something that's really starting to come out where people are asking and people are wanting to share standard work amongst common areas. You know, in the clinic, there's a lot of similar standard work rooming. I mean, it's really not that much different from one area to another. And that you could actually go out and see a manager observing that standard work. So those are behaviors you would see at that level. And then lastly, the frontline behaviors, you know, they would helping us identify where standard work is needed weekly, daily. They would actually be, you could see them developing it and using it, and you know, using the selected tools. They follow the documented process. They're improving it, and they can verbally explain and improve the standard work to show their competency. This is one that has been really rewarding. I think just for us as a lean team, you go to a huddle and somebody asks a question, you know, what number are we supposed to call? And somebody has the standard work or the JBI in their hand, and they say, well, it says right here, it's this number right here, and it's like, wow, it's you can, if you go to a huddle, you can see that they're actually using it, and that's really neat. But I think this system build process has really helped. So again, I think if anybody wants this, it's maybe a little bit hard to see. We can definitely share it if you want to send it. But this process then has really helped us, you know, say from start to beginning. You know, really the first thing you have to do is, you know, what standard work do you have in your area? When we start an event, we use a SIPOC, and we use a model cell. We use a SIPOC, and it quickly starts to tell them or identify, you know, what their standard work is, because in the middle of a SIPOC is process, and they quickly realize they need standard work, or they maybe already have it for those process steps. So identification, and you can see the tools. I apologize, I can't read them all right on my screen, but there are tools that are even helping us through this process. So they identify it. Eventually they have to prioritize it. You can see that there's even, as this slides up and down on here, it tells you even what people are involved in doing these different steps. Once we've identified it, then we have to create it. So in this blue box, we don't have it in the presentation, but this blue box, then we actually have a sub-process down below. We have a second sheet. So I say, if you're going to create standard work, here's the steps. So maybe you need to go do some observation. You probably have to collect policies and procedures, and are there some other documents we can use to actually start creating it. But if you don't have it, observation is a great place to start. So we have another document like this that shows then the frontline people how to even go about creating it. After that, then they have to start reviewing it with a few key people. After that, then we would share it, educate other staff. We would do some observation to make sure they're doing it. And eventually, once everybody agrees that this is the current best way, then we have to make sure that we put this into the JBI of the week, the month, or whatever, so that we're continuously observing this on a routine basis throughout the year. After that, then we will always try to improve, review the JBIs, make improvements, remove the waste, and so this kind of documents the whole process. But just like the blue box, the purple box would show that we have another sub-process for if you're going to observe. We have detailed steps, tools, things like that that help them create and visualize and do the observation of their standard work.
Excuse me. Can
Yep.
you hear me? Can you put the slides to the full presentation mode? Because we can't, the slides are very small to us. And
Yep.
we can't
Hang
see
on.
verbiage.
Where would I do that?
Maybe use slideshow up in the upper corner.
Yeah, I'm clicking on that, but
Not playing. Okay. It's very difficult to follow you.
Is that better?
there we
That's
go.
it. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you. I was looking for that, but thanks for pointing it out. Okay, so I'll just kind of pause and let you kind of look at this. Maybe you can see it, obviously see it a lot better, but I kind of walked through these steps. This blue step I said was, we have a sub-process to show this in more detail. Some of these steps are just one-step things, but this create standard work is, we have like probably 8 or 9 steps we've identified that we attach with this. And then this purple box as well, we have another document showing, the detailed steps of doing this. So the one thing that's really neat about this is, and really helps, is we can, as lean members or lean coaches, we can coach to this document. We can print this document out and give it to them. We actually, because we want to make this standard work system visual, we put it right on their board, and they'll ask us a lot of questions, and we just keep referring back to this, because now we know what the process is, and they can continually be asking us questions, but we can just coach them back to it, because if we're not there, they have a source and they don't have to call us. So it's kind of like a JBI. I mean, when we have JBIs created and people realize and they're comfortable with them, it's a great source for them to refer to after we've gone through this with them a few times. So we're always continuously going back and coaching, but it's all these documents are like standard work for how to do, in this case, a standard work system. So it's been a great resource for us and for our staff. So learnings from the standard work system, we're using the system build as a coaching document. I just said that for model cells, and even we have some areas that were model cells and they're actually they're spreading some of this themselves, and they know this is a great tool or source, and they're using it even without us. So it's pretty impressive. The other day we sat down with a team and we're using this tool, and they started to even point out improvements. So it's like, wow, that's great. I mean, we can make that improvement and share it with others. So it's just like standard work. If we have it, we can make improvements. What are leaders, managers, and frontline people using the system document for? Kind of said this before. It's a visual document to help implement the system, to create and to track accountability with the system. We have those sub-processes that they can learn from and do, and then to communicate leaders the status of their implementation. If a leader goes there, they probably know that right now they're just trying to make their standard work visual because they're a new model cell or a new area. Can we see it? And they can know what to look for when they go there because they have this document as a source to observe and to coach from. And the owner of the tool, we would say in this case, is each frontline manager and administrator. They own this tool, and some of them are already trying to improve it, which is really great. So that's kind of the deep dive into the standard work system. We're going to go through some of these other systems, but not in that level of detail. So you can see we've documented a MDI, Managing Daily Improvement. You saw that earlier. We have 2 systems now that we identify as to be our major systems, Managing Daily Improvement and Strategic Planning. So we've attempted to put this document together. I think we have some really good behaviors. I think we have good outcomes. We're probably, with this one, struggling a little bit in terms of the process. But it's a continuous improvement, and we believe we'll get to a place where this will work and make really good sense. So our learnings from Managing Daily Improvement, we can really coach our leaders to really go look for these behaviors. So that's been a huge help for us. It helps to understand and demonstrate the Managing Daily Improvement system. Again, just like before, it really gives us a process to teach and to train the system. I said before, we start with a SIPOC and visual management, and you probably maybe noticed on the slide, maybe not, that the MDI was a circle and we had one highlighted in red, but by putting this out there and thinking about it and trying to say, where should we start? And we're after the 3rd round of model cells, it really seems to work well that we start with a SIPOC and we get right into visual management or visual controls, and in our case, it's status and flow, because those are really where a lot of the problems originate from, and we can just follow this and feel comfortable and understand, why we start there, and even coach others as to why it's important. Because this system, and I was mentioning this before, because this one system does include a lot of multiple subsystems, we're having a hard time, or it's been a challenge for us to visualize that process and how they interact with each other. But we'll get there, and I think obviously the tool is going to help us get to that point. And it really does highlight the tools used, and we can show that to people, the tools in the process and their purpose. It's just a great teaching tool, and a tool to really refer back to. So that's the MDI system. The next one that we have here, and you can see we have it more completed and filled out, maybe more renewal mechanisms and measures, is our Gemba visit system. We're currently only doing it at a leader level. We're starting with our leaders and trying to get them to Gemba. We've had, by using this and creating it, we've actually, because they really struggle with this, now by working through this and coaching them, we've actually completed one round of Gemba with our leaders going to all the frontline areas, and they did it in like a 3.5 to 4 month time frame. But I think it was this system build exercise in the document that helped them get to that point. So in this case, the renewal mechanism that we're using is that once we complete that quarterly review of going to Gemba, that's when we go back and we review this document. So last Tuesday, we sat down with our leaders and some vice presidents and actually used this to coach, teach, and improve from, and it went really, really well. We've identified our next round of Gemba, and we made some improvements to this. And I think one of the metrics we know that we can have, this is obvious, is that how many Gemba visit rounds are we completing, and the number of Gemba visits by reason, a great measure that we can track. So again, a quick summary of the Gemba visit system. So our learnings, maybe we went through some of these, but it's really, it's an agreed upon process to use for going to Gemba. I mean, we sat down, there was some differences of opinions, but by the end of that meeting, we discussed some of those things, and they did agree in the end, what's our next round of Gemba process that we're going to use, and so they achieved that. We can really coach our leaders to go look for these behaviors. We actually built an improvement into it this time where we're now going to be doing an assessment, which we actually learned during system build, but we're finally getting there, and they're understanding why we have to do that. We did get through that first round. We got some good visits. We got some visualizations so they could see, but they realize now we have to do an assessment when we go, because that's what's going to help us mature, help some of those areas or all those areas get better. We really realized when we looked at the process that in our process we really didn't have plan, do, study, act built in there. So when we sat down with them the other day, and Glenn helped us see this as well, we could see we did some planning and doing in that process, but not study and acting. So that again, I think, is what triggered us to say that our study is, and part of our do is let's do that assessment. The study then is we can study that assessment with the frontline people, and then bring it back and discuss it ourselves. And then the act would be, what accountability or what assignment do we give them in order to improve. Again, it's really a visual snapshot of the current state of the entire system on one page, like standard work. And it's the agreed upon renewal mechanism to review the process and tools every quarter. So again, I think with having this document, it's telling us when we should be reviewing our system. And in this one, I think what's really neat is we have our CEO and our CAO are owning this system and are very involved in doing it and helping us improve the system. So the next one that I would be showing here, that our team is showing, is a system build document around staff hiring and onboarding. And we did a Kaizen event, so maybe it would be all right, Glenn, if you would.
Sure, we did a Kaizen event, and in doing that event, we went through a normal current state map and asked what the ideal state conditions would be, what would a future state map look like. And after doing so with a team, a Kaizen team that was highly cross-functional, highly multi-departmental, I just thought it was a good time for some additional learning. We talked about the advantages of a system build, talked a little bit about why would that be a little bit of a change to our standard work around doing Kaizen events, and talked about that might be a way to come out of a Kaizen event with a new deliverable. And the team really, without a lot of lobbying, saw it as a pretty good value, because we already had the process maps to a future state, and we were already talking about what's the tools we need in each of those steps, and there was a lot of them. A lot of HR tools, a lot of corporate tools, a lot of Wisconsin health system tools. And in order to integrate our overall Mayo Clinic with our Mayo Clinic health system, it helped them reconcile. So the triggers were pretty consistent. Those were a little bit easier to identify because there's some definite steps in hiring somebody that were pretty easily recognized. But reconciling those tools and identifying a process that integrated all the departments and showed each department how to do the handoffs, that was a pretty significant activity, and it concluded in the document you see in front of you. So the learnings is that it's a repeatable process that can be used in several different departments. It was easily understood. We didn't go through a great deal of training. The amount of discussion that we had was really fairly implicit. It identified the responsibilities, and in this case, there was managers, frontline, even leaders in the room from different departments, and it helped clarify who does what and when. It was a communication tool, again, to share, train, observe. It provided a great summary, was what one of the team members actually said, is that, again, without very much training, they simply saw it as a great way to get a more comprehensive mapping and view visually of what we came out of that event doing. And one of the team members even went on to build their own system build document. We didn't show it here, but the onboarding part of this that is done through learning centers and other multi-departments, they put together their own system build document without really any coaching other than what they received in that Kaizen event.
Okay. Thanks, Glenn. So I think we're kind of wrapping up here. So I think so those are the systems we wanted to share and some of our learnings. But I think overall learnings from system redesign is, we built some systems, but not all those system builds are useful. We may, or we probably will combine some of these systems. We created a coaching system, and I think we're seeing now maybe that it probably fits into and is a part of the Gemba system, and we could just combine those. But these tools really help us to be accountable to the system and its components, like the metrics, the renewal mechanisms, and the outcomes. And we say that we need more emphasis on some of those, especially the metrics. So what's next for us? We're going to continue to build some systems. We know that in 2017 we are going to work on building a problem-solving system and improving the ones that we have. We're going to keep coaching and teaching from these documents, using those documents and really, getting some emphasis out of these on the behaviors, and really it identifies a process for us. And then lastly, how do we just keep spreading these and even spreading them without involvement from our area? Because I mentioned earlier, we have one group that went through the first round of the model cell, and they're working on standard work, but because they've done that and we can give them this system build document, they're doing it with a lot less input from us. It really helps spread that learning and give other people ability to coach, because that's where we want our leaders and our managers being those coaches. So it really helps us enable them to be really good coaches without us having to be there every day. So I think that's our last slide. Yes. So I guess for the last 19 or 15, however long we have, we're open to questions. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. Really appreciate this. The phones are unmuted if people have questions. There's one question here. Dirk is asking a question. How did you prioritize and select the systems that you started to work on?
Yeah, so We have meetings with our executive staff, so we do review all of our transformation activities with them on a monthly basis. We also have strategy deployment and managing daily improvement, as what Paul was mentioning, is our kind of larger, more encompassing overall systems, and when things align to those, it's a nice way to acknowledge that with that alignment, there's pull, and we know we have a type of agreement, even with upper leadership, to put resources to those systems. Otherwise, in addition to that, IEX provides a roadmap. We didn't show it here, but there's a roadmap that they show for that transformation as well. And I would just recommend anyone go to LEI website. There's a roadmap there for how to transform, and a lot of materials there. So between IEX and the LEI resources, you kind of get a need to have a roadmap, and within those roadmaps you get an understanding for wherever you're at in your organization of what should come first and second and third. For us, it was those two major systems. If anybody noticed, there's without saying so, there's a reference there. That's the Toyota production system. They basically have a leading factory floor system and a Hoshin system, and we simply, terminology-wise, called that a managing daily improvement, which is what their leading factory floor system is, and we called it a strategy deployment, which is what their Hoshin system is. So a little bit of big borrow and steal as well, but probably a very tried and true way to simplify an organization to say, what systems do you start with? I'd recommend you got to have strategy that puts a direction and a vision in front of everybody, and then you got to know what problems you're going to resolve in the future. That's that strategy system. And then you got to have something that creates the foundation and the basis for where you can build from, and that's a managing daily improvement. Serve the customer daily and continue to improve daily.
Thanks, guys. Here's a question from Ken. When asking senior leaders to go and observe behaviors at the Gemba, and they asked, why should I do that? What did you say to them?
We were fortunate enough to have our leaders go through the training that, that Shingo transformation by way of the IEX team doing an excellent job of discussing and helping to link that. So just the absolute truth to the fact that a lot of lean activities are short-term, big impact, but not sustaining, or even culturally not aligned, or somebody's idea and it just doesn't propagate as fast as it could or should, I think is a big part of how this team quickly adopted the need to change how we're doing it, and the truth that behaviors represent the culture, and we wanted a culture of improvement. I think all resonated with our leadership, and they were more asking how than why. So I think their why was answered, but I think they were very curious with the how do we do that. And for that, the lean team, I think, stepped in and really helped identify what is behaviors that, how do you define a behavior, what kind of behaviors do we want to define. And again, we've referenced as much as we could the IEX information, so that had good materials to kind of validate what we were instructing and coaching them to.
So before we did the shingle learning and the system build, I mean, when they asked us that question, we didn't know what to say to them. We heard that that's what you should do. Once we went through this, and again, my experience is, Paul, I was in accounting for 20-some years. I'm not an engineer. I've never been through any of this stuff. But when we saw the shingle training and we experienced the system build, it really, our quick learning was that we can help them see and identify what their role is in this whole lean management system. That really answered then for them the why they have to go there. They're going there because they have to model the behaviors, because there's some accountability, and if they go there and ask questions, usually the front line embraces this and makes really great improvements. But if they don't even have people coming around to see what they're doing, it's like, well, it must not be that important. So I don't want to do this. I don't really know I want to do this anymore. That's
a great point. Kathleen has a question. Any advice on how to defined the behaviors related to each level. Was there confusion on which behaviors belong to which level?
So, good question, because you got us thinking. We just glanced at each other across the room here, but no, I don't think so, because really, there's some ways to get that out of our teams, right? You basically are going to your teams, and we're fortunate enough to have leaders, managers in the room doing the training, and in a lot of ways, IEX brought us to the front line, and we did assessments there to help with learning. And the bottom line question was, you are at a huddle, and what is it you want to see and observe? And in leaving that huddle, you're going to tell somebody, that was outstanding. What a great huddle. And all you need to do is fill in the blanks. What made it great? What in your eyes did you see? What in your opinion, eyes, knowledge, take all of your lean learning and bring it down to what is ideal? And what is it that you saw that would make it an awesome huddle, and you walk out of there saying, that was outstanding? And we just started filling in those blanks. So from a standpoint of then saying, who did you see that from, we just then sifted those behaviors into the right buckets. And one of the things that, had we dwelled on some of these systems longer, is there was nothing wrong with saying the same behavior that we saw in a leader was what we saw in a manager. And there was even some activities, some of these systems where that behavior represented itself in leader, manager, and frontline. So once you got that conversation started with, kind of the fill in the blank, what did you see that would make that activity that we feel is really important in this system? What activity did you see that would make it outstanding, or some shape of that question? I think we were able to fill in those behaviors a little easier.
So this is Paul again. I think just going back to the standard work one, primarily a behavior around like observing the standard work would probably lie in the manager, closer to the front line, but a manager. Not saying that you wouldn't have a leader go and observe standard work, but primarily they're really going there to look to see can you see some behaviors around that they're actually implementing and using the system. So to me, when we did the training and talked about roles and said that really the leaders own the culture and seeing that we get the behaviors, the managers own the systems, and the frontline own the tools, that again, there was some more clarification that when we sat down to talk about behaviors and who you would see doing them, there was pretty good clarification from that.
Yeah, and then I would just also offer, what for what we are completing as far as the document goes, it's not the improvement. So identifying these roles, if it's a first time to identify some of these behaviors and then a role, you got to start somewhere, and you'll learn as you go. So we've created these as a forced learning almost. We're putting systems together maybe even before at times we felt we had everything we needed, and it creates a learning as you go.
Those are great observations. John has a question. On your systems diagram, you identified various triggers with the labels coach, spark, signal. Can you tell us what you mean by those?
So I can answer that question. This is Siddharth. As we learned Shingo, we understood and more just the importance of systems and how systems basically drive the culture. We understood that a lot of the times when a process doesn't happen the way it should, it's because the triggers necessarily were not in place. So this just stressed the importance of triggers for us. So when we were talking about triggers, and this is again learning from our partners here in IEX, and we've closely aligned to it and accepted it, is there are different kinds of triggers, and some of those triggers could be something as simple as a calendar meeting, and every time you have a calendar invite, then that's the cue for us to go do something. But then there might be some instances within the process where it might not be as obvious. It could be where you want to create that new behavior of going to the next step in the process, and you might have to coach someone to take on the next step. So for example, an example for a coach trigger would be you go to Gemba and you observe someone finding a problem, and they're kind of stuck there. So the trigger would be kind of like a coach trigger where you could go in them and maybe coach them to say the next step there is probably defect tracking, or identifying that as a problem and working on that problem. Where if that coach trigger was not present or was not available, the frontline person who identified the problem might just firefight or ignore that. So there are different kinds of triggers, and by kind of labeling them as this is a trigger where it's not as obvious and you need to develop, or this is a trigger where it's just a counter-invite, kind of helps us helps us focus on how or what kind of behaviors we need to improve.
Thanks, Sid. And a lot of this is deeper learning that we talk about in the course that these guys have been referencing, but I appreciate those comments. Kathleen asked a question, can you show the slide of their lean timeline progression, and if they were starting now, what would they do differently? And I tried to back it up to that slide. Hopefully you find that on your computer.
I think we would still stay with strategy deployment and managing daily improvement as a starting point. I think, in fact, when they did start with some alternatives, it didn't go quite as fast until we could really organize kind of holistically, systemically, what the organization needed to do. So once we had those two systems in place, I think a lot of the other systems that link to it and subsystems moved a lot better. And again, this is just what we adopted from Toyota. There's a lot of other very good models as well. I'd recommend before you make that decision, you could definitely take a look at David Mann's book on creating a lean culture. You could take a look at some other books that I'm sure Mike could help you identify.
I think we wouldn't have spent as much time from 2007 to 12 just playing with tools. That if we really understood this, we just wouldn't have had that much time just using tools.
Yeah, so I agree with that, Paul. I jumped kind of at that middle 2015, yep. 2016. Yep. Very much to Paul's point, though, if I could speak for our CEO, he would actually still say that a mile wide, inch deep has got, he supports that yet. And he still says you got to create a learning before you even know what you don't know. So I think he would definitely feel that we went a mile wide and 2 inches deep where we shouldn't have. He does believe, though, that we should have a learning that you cover the entire organization with, then go inch wide, mile deep. So this process we all agree to. We've got a few different opinions within the group around what is an inch deep.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, finding an inch deep probably still has some interesting after work conversations. That's
great. There's a question from Dirk where he said, you talk about model cells 2.0. What does that mean?
Sure. So model cell 1.0 is just where we kicked off model cells, and like everything that we've done here, it's a learning. So we called model cell 2.0 because we took everything we understood after the first model cells, and we really modified and redesigned quite a bit of content and quite a bit of our process. And then in model cell 3.0, like all continuous improvement, we took a look at our lead time and we said what was 10 weeks is now only 5 or 8, and we're trying to shorten it, create the same learning, create the same experience, and still follow up from the improvement team in the same fashion. So we do model cells, then we follow up and coach them afterwards, and this is just representing revision 1, revision 2, and revision 3.
Okay, super, thanks. If there are any other questions, what I would suggest is email me, or you can, I can get the contact information for the guys that hosted the call today, and we can have follow-up questions. Paul, you mentioned you wouldn't be averse to sharing a PDF copy of this document, so I'm assuming that's okay?
Yep, correct.
Great.
Yep.
Appreciate that, guys, and I really appreciate your help and your patience dealing with some snafus today, but we did get through it. We've not yet completed the hour. Just some follow-up. Wanted to let people know the recording for this session. Going to clean it up a bit and put it on our internet there, and you can see where you'll be able to find it. And then as far as next steps, later this month, Dirk Van Rossum from in Naples, Florida, is going to talk about a second webinar that he's put together on systems thinking, and he did one a couple months ago, and now he's got to follow up on some additional thinking. In February, Ajay Raikar is going to talk more about strategy execution and strategy deployment. That's as we continue to develop a white paper that we've tentatively called the Pracademic's Guide to Strategy Deployment. In March, our friends from Winneshiek Medical Center in Decorah, Iowa, are going to talk about some of their work they continue to do. We heard previously from Sarah Grew and her team in rehab, and this is going to be a presentation from some folks from the administrative suite about some of the work that they've been doing and how they're continuing to apply this, including some of the things that you saw today, so that'll be interesting. In March, Debbie McAllister is going to talk about the vulnerability and coaching. It's going to be an interesting presentation. Looking forward to that. And anyone that has a story they'd like to share or a request for some problem you're trying to solve, we can reach out to people and have a webinar specifically for that, and that would be terrific. So that's how you can do that. You got my contact information there. You can also exchange information and questions on our group on LinkedIn, and you can join that group by signing up there. And then coincidentally, there is a learning opportunity in February. It is around the course that these guys have been referencing. Our current terminology, we call it Systems by Design. And it is a course that you can learn more about that methodology that these guys have been talking about today. And I'm sure we're going to have other offerings of this course down the road. We've not yet had someone step forward and say they would like to host it, but I anticipate that 2017 is going to have at least one or two more organizations that would like to learn more about the how-to and the work behind this. So again, I want to thank our hosts. Terrific job today, guys. Appreciate you doing this for us. And as I said before, this recording will be available if you want to share it with others. So hope everyone has a good day. If you're traveling, travel safe. Thanks again, guys.